Well, welcome back to Griffith Realty's Land and Legacy podcast. I'm Scott Griffith, and this is my sister Carol Griffith, and we're partners in Griffith Realty. And this is our another attempt at trying to be a little informative about what our history with Livingston County and understanding how real estate works in Livingston County. Carol, it's another interesting winter where the temperatures are getting to like 60 degrees out here in the middle of December and then dropping into the zeros. Sort of a different time than we remember growing up, you know.
It's kind of like our economy. Everything is going up and down at a fast pace.
It sure is.
Trying to keep up.
Yeah, nothing's predictable in either one. And so with that, it seems like with the end of year 2021, and going into 2022, this is a good time to sort of reflect on how real estate has been in the last year or two, and then look towards some predictions for the future of at least how we see it's going to go. So to do that, though, as Carol and I have discussed, you can't really do it without having a framework, and the framework for that, of course, is Livingston County. And so what makes Livingston County a great place to be to both work and have real estate in? And, Carol, what are some of the biggest highlights you see about Livingston County? I mean, what do you think of?
Well, I think you're right. It's always good and prudent at the end of a year to look at what happened during the year, what our expectation is for the upcoming year. But to do that, we need to know what the foundation has been. So when I think of the foundation of Livingston County, I think year after year, Livingston County is a shining light for several reasons. People move here because our taxes are low. Believe it or not, there's 83 counties in Michigan, and Livingston County has the lowest tax base of 83 counties. And I think that's something that most people don't know that I do like to share with buyers, so they know that. So not only do we have low taxes, we have a balanced budget. And as much as you might think that's not a big deal, it really is a big deal because not every county in Michigan has a balanced budget. I know this as being a county commissioner. We work really, really hard on being good stewards with the taxpayers' money. So knowing that we have low taxes and a balanced budget also brings to the point that we are a county that has a AAA bond rating. And why that is important, that gives Moody's AAA bond rating indicates that we do have a good balanced budget, and we have used very good financial control with our budget. It also gives us power for borrowing. So we share that. I think now there's 4 other counties in Michigan that have that kind of bond rating. So not only is that good for our residents, but other township and municipalities. We can help them with borrowing. And if you want to take the financial side, just throw that out the window, even though I think that's extremely important. Livingston County is diverse in its housing, and we talked about this in our first podcast that we have a good mix of housing opportunities. So maybe it's an investment house, we have cottages, we have condominiums, we have farms, we have custom subdivisions for housing too.
But I think that goes to our location. We are such a good location that we are continuing a transition all the time from what I characterize a rural past that our grandparents grew up in out here to a type of a environment that'd be considered more suburban at this point. Clearly that's the direction we've gone, and that leads to our diverse housing that we really do have.
Right.
Some of it's historic and some of it's new. The new being built typically is more the suburban oriented, a little more higher density, and the historic is a lot more on the acreage and open lands. We're blessed to have such a good location with the expressways, of course. That's certainly part of it. Then to have the availability of open land for recreation and all the beautiful environment with lakes and downtowns that are vibrant allows for us to be just a great place to end up. there are certainly other underlying benefits to living out here. As you know, I mean, Carol and I are products of growing up in the school districts out here, Brighton schools, and all the school districts out here are exemplary in what they do and what they're recognized for. It's a good place to live no matter which school district you end up in. They all have high ratings, and they're all sought after. One thing I hear a lot, is the fact that it feels like a safe place to live. Obviously, we've seen an awful lot of randomness in across the country, but for the most part, Livingston County is a very safe place to feel comfortable living in. I don't know how often it's happened in the past where we have gone to sell someone's home for them and asked for a front door key to be able to have access, and they say, "Oh, we never lock the doors." And you go, "Well, you're going to need to start now because I'm responsible." But
and that's so true. I mean, it is low crime, if you will. And here again, as being a county commissioner, I kind of have a pulse on what's going on with public safety. And boy, are we ever lucky in Livingston County that we have great disciplines protecting us. And that's from EMS to 911 to the Sheriff's Department and emergency management. It's just top drawer. It's stellar. And I don't think people realize that. They have that feeling, but they don't recognize it until they actually move in here. And the other thing I wanted to mention, too, is we have great hospitals, world-renowned medicine within driving distance, and that's important to all ages. We are an aging population, and it's very, very important to a lot of people moving in and the residents that we also have. And the recreation is also bubbled up to the top as being one of those things that people want balance in their life, and they look for good recreation now. Roughly just under 10% of our property in Livingston County is dedicated to parks and open spaces, and I think that's huge.
That's big. Yeah, I agree with you about the healthcare. It seems to have moved to us, and it's clear why they did that. For the same reason a lot of people want to live here. It's accessible. Mm-hmm. It's accessible to other major markets, and yet they're in our backyard. Aren't we lucky for that? Yeah. And so, with that framework that we live in a great county and we think it's highly desirable, of course we live here, but we think it's highly desirable, we can start to look back now at the last year or two and talk about the real estate market and how these factors play into the real estate market.
A great impact on the market.
Yeah, it's a great impact, and it's in an environment that we have just come through and still are wrestling with a environment where a virus, COVID, is so dominant and is so influenced the market, both on a local and national market. It's phenomenal that real estate has done so well. And it has literally exploded when so many other industries and so many other types of businesses have had to suffer due to the fact that either they couldn't get people in, they couldn't employ people, they couldn't get supply chain things, and yet real estate has become sought after. And some of those reasons, I mean, the money's been low, the mortgage rates have been so low. We're going through an unprecedented time where we've seen mortgage rates hover around 3%, when by every standard, as you and I grew up, we were told and always understood that 6% would probably be the market average of a mortgage. And we saw interest rates in the 80s when we started our business going into the 18 to 20% range. Right. And now we've seen a extended period of only 3% mortgages. This is phenomenal. It causes, whenever you're not spending on the interest rate, you can certainly then spend it on the house. Right. So that's pressed the house prices up significantly. The fact that the government has trying to offset the impacts of COVID, given everybody money, has allowed people to save more money, and those who spent that money has managed to go to people who have businesses who have then saved their money, and allows for them to have more viable income, create the demand. Right.
And as much as there's been negative aspects of COVID, no one wants COVID. No one wants to see a family member with COVID, or to go through that crisis, if you will. There's some positives, and some of those positives in real estate has been people are spending more time at home. So while they're spending time at home, they're turning the formal dining room into an office because they've been forced to work at home and kind of enjoyed that aspect of being at home. And I think that has also changed their priorities in looking for a home to purchase. So whether you're a buyer with low interest rates as an incentive, or a seller where you have literally the market has pushed up because there hasn't been a lot of inventory, right, but it's built equity in a home.
Well, and so clearly the 30-something market is clearly driving so much of the demand. Yes. You mean the 20s, when they were the 20-somethings and they moved into the cities and moved into the lofts, they got themselves a dog. They had to drive out here to recreate. Now, with work being much more flexible and we're looking toward a time of different work environment, the 30-somethings are driving the market. The predominant time when people buy their first home, they've been out in our market looking because they, like you say, they can work from their house, reuse their house different ways, and then go out and recreate in the backyard. They don't have to drive out here. It's here all the time. They can take a bike ride anytime they want.
And they're forming families.
So they're
looking at schools and opportunities to have a work-life balance. And we offer that here in Livingston. It's the quality of life that we offer. So it's no surprise that we've really been a magnet to still have a lot of sales, a lot of buyers still gravitating toward Livingston County.
So so I had the opportunity recently to be on a National Association of Realtors conference call for a couple hours with leaders from out the country, and look toward the future of what's going to happen now with real estate and so forth. And one of the things that's talked about a lot, and we all are impacted by, is how are our jobs going to work in a period of this new kind of COVID world. It's clear that many more people can work remotely. I believe one of the educators indicated that only though 30% of the jobs in the country truly can be done remote, but the large percentage of them will only require you to come to the office occasionally. So what they're finding is that people are willing to drive much farther if they only have to go to the office a couple times a week to be able to have the rest of the time to be in their quality of life space as we offer out here in Livingston County. So whether your home base is in Ann Arbor, Detroit, Lansing, or Flint, you're 40 minutes or less to work, yet you can still live out here the rest of the time. So there's no doubt that we're beneficiaries, if you want to call it that, of having the quality of life and then still be able to work remotely. I know the county is working on a program to try to improve the broadband capabilities of the outer reaches, our more rural areas, so that more and more of our county is beneficial for that kind of work at home person.
Really looking at expanding broadband, but in order to do that, a survey had to take place first, and it's coming to a close right now just to see what the real needs are. In other words, what areas do have high-speed internet, what areas do not, where there might be gaps in broadband for Livingston County. And then with that data, we will address those needs because it's very, very important. And with some of the funds that the county has been given from ARPA, it's the American Recovery Program, then we will analyze where we can spend those funds effectively and efficiently and give back to the residents of Livingston County. But here again, it's too bad we've all been influenced by COVID, but in some ways we found out that we rely a great deal on broadband. And because of COVID and working from home and school children doing school remotely, this has brought some opportunities that we can take advantage of as a county.
But interestingly, even with that said, that'll be an increase for the future. Right now, reflecting back on this last 2 years and last year, we've gone through an unprecedented time of imbalance where we have such high demand for housing and such low inventory. Right. That's clearly set up the market as we look back at 2021. It's what we know. We used to keep track of the rate of turnover or the days on market for homes, but we talk about the turnover rate. Well, it's so hard to judge because data is usually judged on a monthly basis, but we were having transactions close in less than a month. Mm-hmm. So a home could come on the market and close in the same month, and it never hit the statistics, and people weren't able to keep track of days on market accurately or even know what the turnover rate was. What a unique period to have gone through. And it's not just unique to Livingston County. Obviously, it's nationwide. But in our county, we've seen the increase in valuations. So if you look at the reports from just this year alone, we've had the average price of a home go up almost 18%. Or 16%, and condos up 18%. That is an average. That's just remarkable.
It's remarkable. It's good for sellers, and
the sellers benefit. The buyers are the ones who are most impacted, but with cheap money and good down payments, they've been able to afford it, and it shows the desirability of our community.
Well, and it's interesting when you think about how prices have increased, and yet, this has created some bidding wars with supply and demand, how fast you can react. And I think you'll find that in most cases, the average sale price right now is 101%.
Yeah.
So when we tell buyers, we have to educate them and tell them, particularly if we're talking about millennials, that, if you bring your parents to look at the house, one, it may be gone by the time they get there for that second look. And two, most parents will tell you, well, you never ask full price. You never offer full price. And there's an educational process. Well, you can try to offer 10% less than the asking price, but you won't get it.
You only do that in your first 3 offers, then you start to learn to
maybe the realtor is right. Maybe that advice is right. And so it's a tough lesson to learn. And when they bring the parents, we're like, uh-oh.
Well, so I guess what it really does, though, is leads us to, here comes the crystal ball. What do we think is going to happen this year? I think we need to frame it in. We've also now gone through a period that we haven't seen since I think 1983 of the CPI jumping almost to 8% in 1 month, yes. which is inflation. We've heard so many people call it transitory, but then the reality is transitory has been defined first as a few months, then it was a year, and now I was reading in a maybe it's Kiplinger's or something about they say on a 3 to 5 year horizon inflation just will come right back down. Well, that's a long ways out for transitory inflation.
Yeah, we need a new definition.
The problem is when you factor in both rental increase in prices and housing prices, no wonder these reports come out with such high CPIs. I think as the county goes, there continues, and I guess I'm asking if you agree, but I think you do, there continues to be unbelievable, unprecedented interest and demand for our county.
Right.
So the underpinning of demand is there. Price will become a factor. At some point, you just can't sustain it. I think the more interesting challenge will be as this year goes forward, there are two kind of people that are going to drive our market, the people moving in, and again, back to my demographics about the 30-somethings, there is over the next 10 years, the largest group of buyers coming into the market in their prime buying years of the 30s that's ever been. That should certainly be beneficial. And then you have the move-down market that's out here. The people who move from one home to the other home in our county aren't reaping any benefit, and they're not getting, and if you're in the same market and it all goes up at 15%, there's no win, there's no loss. You're just moving houses, So I think we'll see the influx of people, and then those trying to move down being the dominant people who help our market keep moving, the demand and supply. The person just moving over isn't going to happen. But it also leads to a conversation that we all are so familiar with, and that's the fact the supply has to grow. And the way you grow the supply is with new construction and the lack of new construction. We all know there's lots of structural reasons that include supply and labor, but there's other issues. There's a lack of, so we went through a great recession where we talked about how tough times were, and yet we didn't do anything to change our ordinances and our rules about density, and instead we are still encouraging sprawl versus the concepts of clustering and open space.
I think if you talk to the builders too, they kind of sum it up, and it's all about the 3 L's.
Yeah.
And the L's are lumber, labor, and loans.
Yep.
And I think that's a good way to look at things because an interesting statistic that I heard from a builder from the National Home Builders Association, Michigan Home Builders Association, they said that the average age of a house in Michigan right now is coming upon 50 years. So when you look at that, it's a great opportunity for remodelers if you're looking at household changes. And I thought that was interesting. But the influx, I think what you're alluding to of new construction is there's always been governmental constraints on new construction. And so we talk about that in obtainable housing. I don't want to call it affordable because that means something different to everybody, but obtainable. And so when you have government stipulations, meaning municipalities who will say, well, you won't have anything less than 1,500 square feet for a ranch or 2,400 square feet for a 2-story.
Or you'll be on 2 acres or 5 acres, which just burns up acreage but doesn't add but one house to the acreage.
It just is, it's prohibitive to have obtainable housing for an entry level or the 30-something that we just talked about.
One of these speakers that I was listening to said we need to become sympathetic to densification. This is the ability to have, say, duplexes in communities so that we can drive the cost down and take advantage of lesser footprint that allows for 2 families. We know there's all sorts of weird models about like mini homes and all, but the point being is allow for what he called densification, so you don't create another urban environment, but you create an environment. And he says he blames the NIMBY concept in us. I don't want to be the guy that has to look out the window at that because I have my 1 acre lot. Well, sooner or later, if you want to be able to have somebody serve you at a restaurant or be able to employ somebody who may not be at the top of the pay scale, you're going to have to figure out a way that they can live here, or they're going to work where they live, and that won't be here. So that's a challenge ahead of us.
Well, and I think we need to look at the housing issues that are coming at us just as we have employment issues.
Exactly.
So they kind of go hand in hand. It's just that we need to take a look at those just as clearly and say what's driving the marketplace.
So I think
interesting conversation.
I think it's a challenge ahead of us. I think that we can already based on what we know that in 2022 there'll may be some increase in building, but we don't see a huge influx of new construction taking place. The supply side continues to be a challenge. So our builders of our county are going to probably be able to build as many or more homes than they did this year, but we probably won't see a huge surge in that. So that isn't going to help satisfy the demand as we've seen it. Interest rates are projected now to, due to the inflation and monetary easing, the National Association is projecting that by the end of 2022, we'll be at about 3.8% interest rate, which is, as you know, about 0.8% higher than it is today, about a 21% growth. But at the same time, because money is still so very cheap and that is such a small, it has so little impact on a mortgage, we don't probably see money being the obstacle. So every indication is that we should see price increases again this year, probably not on the scale we have seen this current year because some demand has been satisfied, but at the same time, inventory will continue to drive the market and make this so hard to predict 22. But it's clear that if you want to sell your home and you know where you're going to go, because that's the challenge, you're going to be able to sell your home, and it's probably going to continue to appreciate even at some degree. Historically in Livingston County, we can go back and demonstrate that if you took a real long-term view of over 30 years, we traditionally outstrip inflation by about 2%. So our house growth will be about 2% above the inflation rate, which doesn't sound significant, but when you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're able to leverage it with only 20% down, is a dramatic increase in personal wealth if you look at your home as an investment more than a home. So right. I think we can look forward to another year of substantial growth. Obviously, we don't know the impact of health, the pandemic, and our health, but I think 22 should be as good as 21. I do, just to put a footnote on it, so many people are waiting for the famous fall. They say, how can prices go up like this without coming back down? Well, I do think there could be a cycle in it, but you need something to undermine it, and so far we don't have anything to undermine it. So 22 looks like a very similar year to 21 with just a little bit of tightening.
I have to agree, and housing, real estate is still a very good investment. It's a safe investment. It's something in the long haul that we hold on to,
and it builds your personal wealth.
Builds personal wealth. So I don't think there's a downside to investing in real estate. I think, though, that it's a good education to work with a realtor who knows what can kind of foresee the timing and also give a historical approach. That in Livingston County, it's always increased.
Yeah, and they really know the community.
And they need to know the community, so that it's quite a value to work with someone who's been in the community for generations and can share that kind of information.
And coincidentally, as we wrap it up, that ties to our whole podcast, Land and Legacy.
Yes, it does.
Because you count on us. So with that, we thank you for your time today, Carol. This has been fun, and we look forward to talking to one again. So
take a look at our website if you need more information, or pick up the phone and give us a call. Scott and I are at the office every day.
Glad to help. Thank you.